Hello, team. Welcome to another episode on the Process Podcast. Today, I sit down with Isabel Wolf and we have our catch-ups with Ed and Iz, where we sit and talk about business and what's been happening in our lives in these four walls at Coastal Fitness and the Process Programming. In this episode, we talk about industry trends, my recent trip to Sydney, where I picked up a lot on what's happening in the fitness industry. Plenty of food for thought. If you're a coach, you're a manager, you're a gym owner, or you're just a fitness consumer, I think you're going to find this episode really, really interesting. Enjoy. Isabel Wolf, welcome to the Process Podcast.
Hello, thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. That's really, really good to
Yes.
hear. Yes.
How are you?
I am. I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I just come back from a really great trip in Australia, in Sydney, for 4 days, where I was just basically trying to learn from the best in the business. I wanted to really get outside the bubble of Hong Kong and just see what some of the best gyms were doing. I think it's really easy as a business owner to, we put our blinkers on and we're so focused on what we're doing and everything that we're doing, that sometimes we forget to just look out. And that's something that I've been trying to incorporate into my like daily practices almost for the last 9 months. But I just realized that it's like, Hong Kong is a small place, and the gym industry is still very much growing. In some regards, like I think we're quite ahead of the curve, but in other regards, I think we're quite behind. And certainly in our niche, which is predominantly large group training and personal training, there's not that many people doing what we do. And I was very fortunate to be given an opportunity by my friend Lockie, who used to own 3 CrossFit gyms back in the day, and he transitioned into another area of coaching. So he's working with high-end executive personal training now, and I was very fortunate to be invited down to Sydney to basically stay with him and his housemate, and go into his business and see what they're doing, and picked up loads of amazing things and processes and systems that we can 100% incorporate into what we do here. But also went to visit lots of other group training models, some franchisee gyms, spoke to managers, head coaches, business owners who were all extremely generous with their time and sharing, and just come back feeling extremely motivated. But also when you have these, like when I have these big spells of motivation, I've got a ton of ideas, it's also quite like an overwhelming period, right? It's trying to sift through all of that and create some form of like plan or hierarchy of needs as to what do we do next. So yeah, I'm in that phase right now.
Yeah.
And I think the reason I said like I'm quite good is just because I'm not sleeping very well right now. Maybe partly jet lag, like the 3 hour difference. I didn't see much, but like it means I'm waking up a couple of hours earlier than normal. And just struggling to switch my mind off. But very, very excited as well to like just to level things up here.
Yeah, so I think that kind of alludes to our conversation today. I think we've done 3 episodes now of catch-ups with Izzy and Ed. The first ever one was introducing basically you starting with your mentor, which I think really spurred a lot of the things that we've done over this last, how many months has it been?
9 months.
9, holy shit. Ooh,
Yeah.
sorry, am I allowed to say
You
that?
can swear.
Over these last 9 months, like it's been 9 months of changes that I don't think people see. It's a lot of internal changes. I think that's where we started with. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of a lot of research, and we did launch our new build as well. So I think that was the most external thing that people could see was happening. And then that also led to you traveling to Dubai. Was that just at the beginning of
February?
February?
Yeah.
And we haven't caught up since then. And then that also was one of the reasons for you traveling to Oz now. And I think for a lot of people probably who don't know you and are just seeing your adventures through social media would be like, oh, he's doing a lot of more traveling than usual, because you didn't used to do that.
Yeah.
You would travel only really for holidays and not these quick short trips to work. And I think all of that is just leading to this brainstorming process that your mentor kicked off to you with, like, well, are we maximizing our potential as a gym, and are we doing the best that we can within the industry and as a business owner and as individuals, right? And I think the topic we kind of want to talk about is like, well, what you learned when you were visiting other gyms, but also through this research that we're doing, like what are the industry trends right now and how do we compare as a gym to where we sit in this standard of where health and fitness is going, right? I think a lot of the conversations you and I have had over the last 9 months is like, where do we fit within this industry? How are we catering to certain people? What individuals are spending money on the health and fitness? And like, what is the future of that? I think for me personally, when I entered the health and fitness industry, which was like 7 years ago now,
as in working in the industry.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was kind of a shameful thing to say, being like, "Oh, I work in a gym." I'd be a little bit embarrassed, whereas people were like, "Oh, I'm a doctor," or "I'm
Yeah, you
something
get
like that."
the eye roll look when you
Exactly,
tell
being
people
like,
that.
"Oh, that's what people do just when they don't know what to do with their lives." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? That kind of vibe. I don't know if you feel the same, but that's how I felt. But now I'm actually proud to say that I work in the health and fitness industry, especially some place like ours where we're not doing as much as we could be, which is something we're going to discuss, but we're doing more than just training compared to just like your global gym, right? But I'm proud of it also because like it's a booming industry now. And honestly, it's one of the best industries to be in terms of quality of life, but also your ability to impact people and connect with people and change people's lives, like things that you can see. And so I also think like it's an industry that more and more people want to be a part of just because of that. Yes, that has its challenges because it becomes so saturated and the competition is so high, but I think that just shows how successful of a place you could be if you do it right, right? And so I think that's a huge change for me. But with that, like we're going to talk about, you have to find your competitive edge and you have to find what makes you more than just the average personal trainer who can get a certificate off of anywhere right
Yeah.
now, right? And so I think, yeah, I'd love to talk about how trends have changed. What are the trends right now and how like kind of spending power and perceptions have changed around the industry?
Yeah. I mean, I want to first yeah, I very much resonate with like the public perception of being in the fitness industry.
Yeah.
And it's probably because everyone as a consumer is now consuming fitness,
Yeah.
right? Especially in like capital cities like Hong Kong or big business financial districts, Hong Kong, Singapore's, Dubai's. I'm talking like affluent areas. Everyone's got a health and fitness membership of some sort, whether it's a gym or it's Pilates or they're part of a run club. And so there's just like this growing community right now and a huge growing market. So like there's no better time than now, at least looking back, to my 16 years in the industry to be in this industry. But like every industry, um, there are niches. There are certain businesses that are doing really, really well. There are certain offerings that are doing really, really well. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's those who aren't doing so well. And so I think that is definitely shifting. And there's been like lots of shifts that I've definitely seen and experienced firsthand in the last 16 years. When I think about like where my career started working in personal training studios, which had like power plates and TRXs and maybe one squat rack. You go into a gym now and that has completely
Yeah.
evolved and changed. But I think, yeah, in more recent times, I think what we're seeing in the industry is this like it's a barbell analogy of, right, we've got two ends of the spectrum, and this is like a very poignant thing that exists in lots of other industries as well. But what we're seeing is that we've seen the rise of like the 24/7 gym model. So 24 hours, 24/7 gyms who have really low cost. They take big spaces, but minimal staffing required, cheap memberships, and they're basically winning on volume, right? They got mass memberships. I think the statistic, I might have this wrong, but I think it's something like 40% of all members at 24/7 gyms don't actually use a gym, right? So sales teams are relatively high because they know that if they can lock in 100 members, that only 60 of them are actually going to use it, so they can
Yeah.
have an
Yeah.
excess of members. So that model seems to be doing pretty well, but that has grown really, really fast post pandemic. I think in Hong Kong we didn't really have any 24/7 gyms, and Go24 was the first of its kind, really, who was offering like beautiful equipment, beautiful facilities at really low cost prices. And we had Marty Barr, the founder of it, on the podcast talking about it. And then since then, you've got these 24/7 models almost on every corner
Mm.
of every street. So that seems like it's an industry that's doing quite well. But I'm sure within that niche, which I don't understand all that well, it's highly competitive, right? There's like there's a lot of cost cutting. People trying to offer memberships a little bit less than others. They're bringing in like the recovery aspects of everyone's got sauna and ice baths now.
Yeah.
The equipment has to be state of the art. It has to be beautifully aesthetic.
Yeah.
Like you can't just have a 24/7 gym now that's like run down and got crappy equipment. They've all got the best equipment now. They've got lighting is on point. They've got Instagrammable walls.
Yeah.
So that has evolved even within that. And I think on the other end of the spectrum, you've got like the really high end boutique offering, where gyms are bringing in things like nutrition. They're looking at blood work. They've got recovery facilities. It's more of an individualized approach. Now, traditionally, when I always think individual, I think personal training, but there's been this kind of rise of like small private group coaching, where there's still a very high value offering. Um, but the business is able to scale more effectively because they keep the costs low with one coach and they can serve multiple people. So
Yeah.
that end seems to be doing pretty well as well. Group fitness is still 100% about and around. But now that you've got these other offerings which are doing well, like as a group fitness provider, you need to be making sure that you are positioning yourself to actually give yourself a chance to still survive and thrive against those two markets. And what I mean by that is that when you compare the impact that we have a large group training model has on people's lives, well, you're not going to be the executives, right? The executive personal training studios who are giving, bespoke individualized coaching, but you're probably going to be giving a little bit more value than, the 24/7 gym model, because it's, you're still putting energy and time into building relationships and hopefully high level coaching. But then, a lot of these large group models, like us, like fairly outdated facilities. So we are losing out to both ends of that barbell, who have beautiful facilities now that are curating to a generation that really values that kind of stuff. And if we're not keeping up with that, then we're going to be left behind on all accounts. A lot of large gyms, large group coaching facilities, like they haven't professionalized their systems and services, right? So it's they don't have operations staff. They don't have clear systems for payment. The coaching, coaches still struggle to see how they can climb a ladder. So I would say that coaching has not been professionalized in most gyms, like of our kind, in which case they can go to both those other ends of the spectrum and at least see a clear ladder of how they can progress. um so yeah, I mean, those are just like some things that are off the top of my head straight away. So it's not to say that the large model can't do well, but I think you just need to understand that like this market is getting fiercely competitive. Every single 24-hour gym also has a functional fitness training space. Like they've all got rigs, they've all got, Alico barbells, they've got lifting platforms, they've got rings, they've got space for high rocks where they can do sled, they can do all the things that a typical CrossFit gym or functional fitness studio can do. So you got to be providing something pretty damn special in your group coaching services to pull someone into your gym.
Yeah.
So yeah, thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in there to pinpoint. So basically, the research that we've done is like there's really three standout trends right now. There's including technology in your facility or in your training program. There's um incorporating just like this holistic wellness, like you said, like nutrition, body fat composition, functional medicine, all that kind of stuff. And then there's community. I think with our form of training, we've always been one of the best community providers. And I think that's what has made us so successful for so long, even regardless of everything that you've said that we may not be A plus in. But what's happening now is, for example, when I first started in this industry, this is when it had the boom of these kind of beautiful boutique gyms. That was like 2017 when I got into spinning. That's when really like spinning took off and those Pilates studios and kind of those bare where it's like you said, everything is aesthetically pleasing, like the bike room was fierce, like, you had these selfie walls and all the lightings and all that kind of stuff, and this was, like, never seen before. Gyms were just known as these kind of dingy places where you go, and
It
that's
was
why.
cool to have a rustic, shitty
Exactly,
gym.
and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden that shifted in that era because that was catering to the market that was spending money, which was the millennials, that they cared about, like what you said, all of these aesthetic Instagram, um, content creation kinds of things, and now this boutique studios were able to cater to that, And so everyone shifted to there. But the problem with those things became that there really wasn't a community. Like, yes, you're spinning with a group of people, but you're not interacting with those group of people, right? And now you can see those industries trying to shift into other things that include more of a community, or they try really hard to create like community challenges or get-togethers and stuff for that, which is why I think our industry still was able to keep strong because we had that kind of like cult-like community, right? That everyone does crave. And because you have your own life, you find in a gym, that's where you find friendships and people that you're with all the time, right? And like you said, now I think through COVID, it was a huge, we probably are one of the industries that suffered the most in terms of our brick and mortar. But during that time, that's when everyone was like, oh shit, health is important. Because, it was the people who were unhealthy that were kind of struggling through that time. And again, I think it's our generation, the millennials and the younger people who saw the effects of being unhealthy. And they also couldn't go out. So they were like, well, what are we going to do? Well, now we can work out, we can go for runs, we can connect with people through these kinds of like YouTube, online training platform things, right? And so I think that really took off with the online training and working out at home, and loads of people had their garage gyms and stuff. But now people again are craving that community and connection and being able to receive that personal information from coaches or their peers. And that's why I think people are now looking to go back to gyms, right? But what they're looking for is an elevated experience of what they've experienced previously. And that's where this shift and like, okay, now people are looking for a place that can offer everything, which is what I'm saying, a place that looks amazing because they're willing and capable of spending money. It's our generation, basically the 30-year-olds who have this spending power, and that's the people who care about the way things look, right? So they're looking for that. They're looking for the community, but they're also looking for like real results and how can it be more than just um like training, because we're the generation that cares about all of that now. It's like, okay, well, how about my blood markers? How about my stress levels, my sleep, because we grew up around all of that information. And so it's now, okay, now who can deliver this beautiful package all in one is the people who are going to stand out. So I feel like we have all these separate pockets of industries who are doing each of these trends really well, but there's only a few, and it's the very successful ones who are able to bring it all together to really then become this niche that stand out, right? So yeah, I think that's kind of what we're learning and what we're seeing. And again, like what we're saying, with everything that's going on, I don't think it's like a training methodology that stands out, because I do think like everyone's educated and capable now to get people fit and healthy. It's the extras that make people want to come to you and make people want to stay, right?
Yeah. I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount. I would say that one thing I think has really changed though in the methodology side of things has been this move towards like functional training
And
being
still
cool.
strength training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think when I got into the early days of CrossFit, it was like CrossFit was just so different to what everyone else was doing.
Yeah.
We were the ones that brought in like rigs and pull-up
Mm.
bars and barbells and hexagon dumbbells that you could drop on the floor, and we made kettlebells cool.
Yeah.
Right? Were just kettlebell sport is just a tiny little niche that's never really taken off. And so when I got into it, CrossFit was so one of a kind and so unique that I think it's why a lot of people gravitated towards it. The whole idea of like we build machines when we don't use machines, which I always fucking found very cringe. But anyway, but now like there has been this massive movement, and I think things like High Rocks has been a massive contributor to this, of people now moving into that space and that becoming the mainstay. But when I look at like strength and conditioning over the years, right? You look at the last 100 years since gyms have been a thing that people invest money to go to. like your barbells and dumbbells and pull-up bars have been a mainstay in fitness forever.
Mm,
Progressive periodization has been a concept that coaches have been using for hundreds of years, training Olympians, in the early 1900s, but even before that that's been normal,
mm,
right? But it's almost been looked at as like this almost like niche taboo thing that only like really nerdy people do. Only like the top athletes do that type of training, but now we're seeing that move into like mainstream fitness.
yeah, and what's more exciting about that is that you have this huge female population
Yeah,
now wanting to be a part of this because it's being normalized by, like, celebrities and everyday people being like, "Well, actually, lifting weights and strength training is what's giving me the physique that I want," which is, like, the bone density for when you get older and able to do all these things, and now it's becoming just normal for, like, people the reason, like, spinning studios and yoga and Pilates, I'm not dissing these at all, by the way, it's just those were so popular because that was kind of like, "Oh, only girls should be doing these kinds of things," but now places like us are giving these places a run for their money because
yeah.
girls are wanting to strength
But
train.
that was also the era of like high intensity training,
Mm,
which is also, CrossFit definitely piggybacked on that as well.
yeah,
Where
the
basically it was
hit and
like,
stuff.
yeah, get the same results in less time.
Yeah,
And that's what was so attractive about HIT. It was like, oh, I don't have to do,
an
an
hour
hour
of
of zone two
yoga,
work. And,
yeah.
even like zone two work, for example, has been studied for over 50 years and they've documented how powerful it is for your health. But it just got brushed under the rug because people thought they could shortcut that. Oh, I can get the same results just by doing 10 minutes of circuit training
Mm,
or a Metcon and CrossFit or Barry's Boot Camp. But actually now, science also shows, and this is like the cool thing about people like Peter Attia, Andy Galpin, who are, really good speakers. They understand how to communicate via things like social media and YouTube, and they are scientists who are cool. And so they're talking about these concepts and making it really understandable for mainstream population. So they're talking about longevity, they're talking about VO2 max, they're talking about strength training. They're creating their own tests for what every elderly person should be able to do should they want to live long and
mhm,
prosper. And because you've now got scientists who've been saying this honestly for hundreds of years, but they now have a voice on social media platforms and they're not just like these nerds in white
yeah.
suits who with grey fuzzy hair. Like these are actually cool guys. Like Huberman's got tattoos and he works out. Like, it's a very
Yeah,
different
yeah,
mold of scientists now. So now that this is making its way into like the mainstream world, like that's fantastic for gyms, and you're seeing it, really play out in the fitness industry. So yeah, that's yeah the those guys, Peter Attia, putting that content out there. Then you've got the rise of high rocks. You're seeing people moving away from just thinking that HIT is all they need to do, or yoga is all they need to do, or running is all they need to do, and
well, actually, there's a huge boom in running.
yes, but can I just say something? It's like where I was going with that was that previously it was run or nothing,
Mm,
right? So you have the running crowd, you have the gym crowd. You didn't have the running gym crowd.
yeah,
And that is basically what we have now, which is people are seeing that fitness should be like well-rounded
mhm,
and encompassing.
yeah,
And it should, have things like running or, aerobic conditioning in there. And it should also have weights. And I think the fact that this is now accepted and cool
yeah,
amongst women is like what an amazing time to be a part of this movement and in this industry, because that's now 50% of a population we didn't really have previously. And they have a lot of spending power.
yep.
And yeah, it's been crazy to see. But I honestly think that things like high rocks have had a massive part to play in it. And I think high rocks coming in and creating, the sport for everyone and achieving mass participation and having this rapid growth strategy where, someone who just never played sport and maybe, decided to go to the gym once or twice a week, they now have this thing that they can do, which kind of allows them to feel like an athlete. And that's what attracted so many people to CrossFit in the early days, was that everyday, mums and dads or,
We're getting pull-ups and all these
yeah,
kind of
we're
things.
like, oh my God, I can do
And
this.
losing weight
Yeah,
quickly
the
and
only
all that
thing
kind of
is
stuff.
obviously like the barriers to entry were much, much
Yeah,
higher with
and
that.
the injury rate
Yeah,
as well.
because the barriers to entry was so high, the
Yeah,
complexity was so high. And then, High Rocks have come in and I even within the High Rocks market, I've seen a massive change because originally when people just were getting into the first High Rocks race, which we all took part in, they thought that all they needed to do to be good at high rocks was just run, push sleds, do wall balls, and do some sandbag lunges.
Yeah.
I think people realize after 6 months of just doing that every day, A, it's boring as hell.
Yeah.
B, like you don't actually really progress just by doing the same things all the time. Like you need to get strong, you need to think about keeping yourself structurally balanced. You need to have smart, intelligent run progressions if you want to see progress
Yeah.
with your times, which ultimately is what everyone wants, right? It's so smart because it's measurable and it's put on this global leaderboard that you can access at any point in time. And people, just like marathon racers, want to see themselves getting better. And I think what we've experienced is that because we were early adopters to high rocks, we knew straight away, having coached people in so many different sports for so many years, that it's like, well, you can't just do high rock style workouts, which is what everyone was putting out, right? Every high rocks program was just AMRAPs and rounds for
Yeah.
time of broken down variations of high rocks. We tried to come out and be maybe we tried to put our us coaches hats on and say, listen, we're going to create a periodized strength program that's going to prepare you over 24 weeks or more for your race, and it will slowly look more and more like a high rocks race. And that's basic periodization. But I think the high rocks market didn't understand it at the time. They were
Yeah.
like, why do I need to squat if
Yeah.
I want to PR my PR
Yeah.
time, my high rocks time?
That's
But
what it is like always in the beginning of an industry when
yes,
you're trying to be movers and
yeah.
shakers, right? People don't get it
And we
until
were
they can.
trying to, sometimes this is where sometimes being first to market isn't a good
Yeah.
thing. But now the market understands that because people have been doing high rocks races for 3 years now, and now they're seeking out, you know, top strength and conditioning gyms who are looking after those aspects of fitness, and knowing they're educated now to know that, oh, this is how you get better at a high rocks race, is I've got to do the strength work and I've got to do the mobility work, and I need to do X, Y, and Z. So that has been fantastic, honestly, for people like us in our space, who are thinking about strength conditioning in a different way. I don't think traditional CrossFit is necessarily, I don't know how much of an uptick in demand they've had from high rocks. I think in the early stages, yes, but now everyone's a high rocks gym,
Yeah.
right? So if you got a choice of a high rocks gym that's just focusing on high rocks versus a CrossFit gym that's focusing on high rocks, well, I'm always going to choose a high rocks gym if I'm a consumer, because that's actually what I want.
Yeah, I think a big reason for that is like, yes, High Rocks is known for being like always changing, but I do think that there's a set of movements that you constantly do, right? Whereas I think people are enjoying High Rocks and enjoying running because it provides you with two of the trends, which is like technology, where you can track your progress actually, and the community part of it. But you can also like do your strength training and do your running and see progress with that automatically and immediately, which I think people are craving. And that's why they get to it. Whereas I feel like with CrossFit, yes, people go from like being able to not do a pull up to do a kipping pull up, but I feel like it's not as easily measurable success because you're always trying to input other things in there. Do you get what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say? Whereas like when you do a 4 week strength program, you can see in 4 weeks your immediate progress because you have a goal within the 4 weeks, which is what I believe High Rocks is doing well. Is like, okay, they have planned dates, and that's what people train for. People are like, okay, in 12 weeks time I'm doing my race. I know my previous time, so I have 12 weeks to do better. What do I need to do that? And so
yeah,
it's really focused within a time period that us as human beings need that, like that's why we set goals for ourselves, because we're like, okay, at the end of the year I'm going to achieve this. So because we need that motivation and plan to in order to stay on track with our goals, right?
yeah,
And so I do think that's one thing why running and sports like High Rocks are just booming right now, because people are able to find purpose and passion outside of their everyday jobs and everyday lives by fully investing themselves into something that, and they do see the benefits of that in their lives. Like, yes, if they're doing strength training for High Rocks, which is like lunge, squat, deadlift, push, like that translates to your life, right? Without causing injuries, if done well.
yeah,
And you see aesthetic changes, you find happiness and fulfillment because you're doing something good for yourself and you feel better internally and externally. And along the way, people like doing, and what I think High Rocks did well is they gave you the opportunity to do it with a friend or a group of people, because there you find that community aspect of like training with
yeah.
your best friend or your partner, right?
What I think is going to be interesting is like looking at the lifeline of high rocks and where it's going to go, because I think, I have lots of thoughts around this, but I think there's like the competitive consumer. So people like me like you before, right? Actually, I'm kind of like where you are right now, which is where like I look at competition sometimes, I'm like, why am I doing this? But I think, a lot of people go through a phase where it's like you really love the competitive aspect of something. I mean, we've seen this in CrossFit, right? People do 5 CrossFit Opens and then they get to the point where they're like, kind of done with this. Like
Yeah,
what the not so much a risk, but it's the effort is no longer matching the reward,
yeah,
and therefore it's like I want to just do CrossFit because it's fun. I enjoy getting stronger, but I have no intention to really push the limits of performance.
yeah.
And I think probably with High Rocks right now is we're seeing that happen with a lot of people, right? They're kind of this is now their sport, this is their thing that they're
Mm,
doing for the very first time, and there's probably going to be this like 2 to 5 year period of like wanting to run faster times every single time. There's
yeah,
going to become a point, just like in CrossFit, where to get that next 1% better, it gets really hard,
yeah.
right? You've got to start now. And this is where CrossFit has started going from training once a day, 5 times a week,
To
to suddenly training
yeah,
twice a day because it was like, well, I'm not improving at the rate that I want
yeah.
fast enough. I have to just increase my volume and intensity. And so it's going to be very hard at some point in time. Obviously, it depends where you're starting. Like if you're really just starting your running fitness journey, then you could have like probably 10 years of progression here. But if you're someone who's like who's a more experienced fitness consumer, you've been doing fitness for a really long time, you've been doing different methodologies, doing different gyms, following programs for years, like there is definitely going to be a lifeline. And then what? Right? So I think this is where a lot of people in, I think, higher socioeconomic groups who are making more money, their dropout is things like triathlons, Ironman, right? We're seeing loads of like, and these things are
Endurance-based sports.
expensive as hell, right? They're
Yeah,
not cheap. You got to,
yeah.
the ticket price is like 500 US. I might get that wrong, but don't quote me on that.
All the equipment.
All the equipment,
Yeah.
they're all in beautiful places. So you got
Flying
to
to
fly, you got to
places.
get a
Yeah,
hotel. Like
yeah,
these are like, you can't be poor and do Ironman races. But you have a lot of people moving towards like endurance-based activities as they get into kind of like their 40s and 50s.
so that's what I was gonna say, which I think CrossFit is the bridge, like, for people who've not done anything, it's like, "Oh, I can run 1K in intervals," right? And then that's how they start getting into running, and
Yeah.
then knowing that you need to be better at running and the amount of running that you need to do to get better at running, people are start getting into running, and then that becomes the next thing, being like, "Okay, I've done these couple of High Rocks races, now I wanna do a half marathon, I wanna do a marathon," and then they do that for a few months, and it's like, "Okay, what other thing can I chase after that?" So it's kinda like the bridge between that, but while you're doing that, you're also doing these strength training sessions. So, like, these girls and these people who've never done fitness before is like, oh, I want to get a heavier back squat. I want to get a heavier deadlift because this is the first time they've done it, So it kind of bridges into these different worlds and
Yeah.
activities that I think is where us as gyms need to be able to kind of forge and encourage. But like you said, these endurance based activities, which is why I think running is becoming such a big thing, is because again, it's similar that anybody can do it if you start it. Um, there's a way for you to compete in a way that everyone can sign up for a 5K, a 10K, a half, or a full, you know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
it's like you can go against the global leaderboard, but you can also try and beat yourself. And in order to do that, in order to get better at running, we know you need to do strength exercises. So it's kind of like you can
Yeah.
see the trend within all these things. It's like that's the current
I think there's one
trajectory of
element
it.
to this is like we haven't talked about yet, but I think, and that is around transforming your body.
Yeah.
And I think this is a thing that people are really realizing now. They said it for years, right? All the strength crowd, including me, have always said, if you want to change your body, like you have to strength train.
Yeah.
And then there's been this big debate where it's like, no, you just need to do cardio. Cardio burns fat faster. But then the strength crowd saying, well, if you don't have muscle actually burns faster than fat faster than cardio. And like, you're actually changing your body composition by building muscle tissue. So I think now, when I think about strength training for me, and I look at, what I've done since I was 14 when I lifted my first weight up until now at 37, like my training, the bare bones of what my training has looked like has really not evolved very much. It's deadlifting, it's hinging, it's squatting, it's pressing, it's pulling, it's doing single leg stuff, it's doing core work, and it's doing conditioning work.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be, it's going to be iterations of pretty much that until the day that I die. But I also know the big driver for that is I know that if I want to have the body that I want,
Yeah.
that's a necessity. If I just became an endurance athlete, I'd be, I'm terrified. That's why I don't do it. I would become skinny. I lose all my muscle, and that's just not how I want to look because that doesn't give me confidence in the way that I think confident men look like,
Yeah.
right? And so that's just my thing. And I think because there's more and more people now, it's like, we've seen the norm of what is sexy
Hmm.
evolve so much over the years. But now, like, the sexy man is like, he's jacked. He's not obscenely jacked, but he's got muscle, he's lean. Um, I mean, he can run, he can lift weights. He's confident when he steps into a gym. And I think, a lot of the female body's changing as well. Like, it's gone from skinny and a stick to now being like, a lot of Hollywood's top actresses and like
Yeah.
the people with the biggest followings, like they're all athletic.
So I think a lot of that goes back to one of the three trends right now, which is optimization of your overall health, right? And your physical abilities. And because of all this research and stuff that you're talking about, is that you need to be strong, but you also need to be enduring, which is definitely this rise of this hybrid thing that's going on. Is because you have to be the best at both. And yes, if you want to be the best endurance athlete, you're probably not doing as much strength training as we would think that you're doing. And if you want to be strong, you're not doing as much aerobic training as you think as this type of model is doing, right? But kind of it's kind of this, how can you balance both, still be the strongest you possibly can be and the most aerobically fit? It's kind of this challenge that people are trying to do right now. What's the fastest triathlon time I can take while still squatting this
Yeah,
amount, and that goes to, because people know that if you are doing a lot of endurance and you're also doing strength work, you get this optimal physique, but you also get, unless you're overtraining, you also get this optimal of like health, like you
yeah,
were saying, your markers of like VO2 max, but also your bone density, you know what I mean, and your ability to hang and all that kind of stuff, which is these markers of physical health, right?
yeah.
So I think that's what you're this middle ground is kind of forging these two worlds that have always been so separate, to be like, how can we be the best of both? And I think that's the challenge that people are loving right now. It's like, well,
Which is
look,
which is basically what made CrossFit so popular.
yeah, but then CrossFit kind of steered into
Yeah, but
the
that's it, right? It was like
different
people
direction.
love the fact that it was like strength conditioning, like it was the everything. It was like
Yeah.
the CrossFitters was seen to be the fittest
But then they
athletes in the
started
world.
adding movements that really weren't involved in this
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. But I think that's the allure of
Where
it,
it
right? For
started.
me,
Yeah.
it was like it's not just about being strong, it's
Yeah.
about being fit and having mobility. Still don't have that. But learning skills and yeah, that was something that was really that like attracted me to it. But no, you are totally right. Yeah, it's a rise of this like how can you conquer these two things? But I also think that is like, if there's gym owners listening to that and they're seeing this like rise of like the fanatic hybrid athlete, I think it's also important to know when you look at the whole market, those are the fanatics.
Yeah.
And like we I speak for myself, but I think we all feel that that's how everyone thinks because that is our environment. But when you step outside of our environment, there's not that many people who are thinking to that degree, that
Yeah.
that level of like, okay, how can I like PR my
Optimize
back squat
yourself.
and my
Yeah.
5K?
Yeah.
The vast majority of people are still being driven by body composition, which is, what they're really saying is that they want to feel more confident in their own skin. What they're really saying is that they want to climb their perception of how they're viewed in their social circles and their professional circles. Like those things will always be the mass drivers, in my opinion, of
But
why
if you
people go
were
to
to
fitness.
train for those goals, wouldn't it be
That's
strength and
evolving.
conditioning?
Yes, because that has evolved.
Yeah.
But I think that absolutely, but I think that their motivations and drivers are not their 5K run time,
Yeah.
but the form of how they do that now is
Yeah,
basically
exactly.
what we've always
It's
preached.
basically just changing the name of the goal, but the methodology is still exactly the
Yeah,
same, and it's just now it's doing the same thing, and there's just two ranges of people that you're doing it for. People who just want body comp, but do it at a smaller scale. Like, you don't need to
yeah,
train 3 days a week, 45 minutes, versus people who are literally trying to do a marathon and be strong as fuck. They're probably doing way more. So it's just like the same methodology, and for this just different goals, or different goals, quote unquote, because like the high level people still have that. They want to be body comp. Why do they want to be the best? Because they want to be the best in their socioeconomic circle, right? Um, so yeah, again, it's the way that you package things. It's the way that the message that you're providing, making sure it's clear, concise, but also making sure that the way that you're delivering things is in a way that people want to hear it and people want to be a part of. Like, I do think right now there's a huge rise of like the way that your brand is perceived, which unfortunately I think is CrossFit's downfall compared to other up and coming fitness brands that are coming up. It's like you want to invest your money, and when like we talk about your buying power and the power of your dollar all the time, if you were to spend, like we're saying, the competition is just, I'm not gonna say competition because it's amazing that health and fitness is so big right now and that everyone's prioritizing it. But that just means if that's your industry, what's gonna make someone pay for yours versus
Yeah.
someone else when really the methodologies are very similar, right? So it's like, okay, well, it's us as people, the way that we make people feel, and the little extra value things that we provide that will make people choose your business over others. And I think that's really what we're trying to dig deep into our own business right now is like, how much value are we giving the people walking through our doors? Are we really doing what we're saying we're doing, which is positively impact lives? Like, we're not saying we don't believe in our training methodology or anything like that anymore. It's like, are we really changing people's lives? Like, why are people spending money on us versus the gym down the road,
Yeah.
right?
And obviously that is a mission statement that's unique to us.
Yes, everyone would
Like
have to look at their own. Yeah.
we really care about having a
The people through
significant
our doors.
impact, and we
Yeah.
know that that means that we can't just be training.
Nope.
We got to be talking about the other things as well, which honestly was the main motivation behind starting this podcast.
Yeah.
Was like, we need to have the conversations, and how can I put that out there
Yeah.
on a bigger platform?
And I
But
think
how,
that's someone every business owner, regardless of your industry, needs to think about is like, times are changing and you could just get anything anywhere anytime now, whereas it wasn't
yeah,
like that before. It was easy to be the only business owner in some sort of thing before, whereas now it's very unlikely that you're one of one,
yeah,
right? So it's like, really, how are you standing out? And
yeah,
that's what you need to come back to is like every little 1% thing matters in order to really elevate your business, right? Regardless of what
yeah.
industry that you're in.
I think like I want to just put a message out for like the CrossFit gym owners out there,
Yeah.
because I think having just been down in Sydney and seen lots of really, I think, thriving large group fitness models, which is essentially what CrossFit gyms are, right? We're coaching big groups of people at one time. I think it's really important we've got to pay attention to what those guys are doing, because they are now everything we've been talking about, right? They are now seeing that there is now an alternative to CrossFit, right? Which previously there wasn't.
Mm.
CrossFit was so unique
Yeah.
in what it was doing and how it was delivering it in the methodology, that I think people in CrossFit gyms just didn't have a plan B.
Mm.
But now, because of the rise of high rocks, because of the rise of running, the hybrid model of training, all of these gyms and these big franchise gyms now are making moves into that space. I went to the Yard, which is, one of the owners is was the founder of F45, which is still a business, but it's definitely, it's had a rocky couple of
Yeah.
years. And basically most of the gyms in Sydney have basically ditched the F45 model and have moved into models like the Yard. And when you walk into a Yard, it looks like a CrossFit gym, but just way nicer.
Mm.
The aesthetics are on point. It's like very beautiful. The room is split down two. You got one side, which is a rig with loads of benches, all custom colored, looking beautiful. And then the other side, they've got, AstroTurf, or, they've got all the ergs and just like basic equipment like dumbbells and kettlebells. But it's aesthetically beautiful. It's at a price point that's a lot more affordable than a CrossFit gym. CrossFit gyms are really expensive
Mm.
still, and they're ultimately delivering the same thing, right? Okay, maybe they're a little bit less measurable, right? There's not the buy-in in terms of recording your numbers and your data, but not everyone wants that anyway. And so, as a CrossFit gym, like, you no longer have monopoly of the functional fitness group training
Yep.
market. Like, the competition is hot, and you need to make sure that you are, number one, making sure you're doing your things, whatever those unique things are, really, really well.
You
So
can't just be piggybacking on a name of something
no, you
at
can't do
all.
that anymore. I do think what CrossFit coaches have in their favor is, I still think CrossFit coaches are some of the best group coaches in the world. Right. I think what the CrossFit level 1 is really fantastic doing is teaching you how to really teach movement.
Mm.
And I don't think there's many other certifications out there that do that.
Except the
But
process education.
process education is another level, but yeah, we're talking about mainstream big stuff right now. So CrossFit coaches are really good. But like you can't have a shitty looking gym anymore. It's not okay to not have air conditioning. It's not okay to have shitty showers or a toilet that doesn't work. It's not okay to not have a reception desk or someone who is looking after your experience as a customer. Like you can't have shitty lighting or lights flickering in the corner or like dirty walls because I'm sorry, the gym that's going to probably open up next door to you in the next 6 months is going to have all the equipment that you do, and it's going to be a lot more affordable and it's going to look a hell of a lot better than you.
Basically merging this 5-star hospitality expectation with the best of corporate now into health and wellness. It really is becoming an industry. Does that make sense? I think it goes back to what I started this conversation with before, where being like a person in the gym was like a lower level thing, whereas now, because they've really leveled up and elevated what a gym business can be and the potential that you could make when you're working there, or the potential that people are going to spend when they're there, that it's really like it's a business, and it's like um it's something that is now aspirational, that you can go to places and feel like you've just been to the Marriott or the Ritz-Carlton. So it's your job, if you want to be to that level of career and business ownership and entrepreneurship, that you're making sure you're at the standards of the best in the world in their industries, right? And I think that's something we're taking a hard look at ourselves on, being like, well, are we doing that? Are we a 5-star facility? Are we an Apple? Are
Yeah.
we a Ritz-Carlton? Are we a Bentley? Like those kinds of things, just within the health and fitness space.
Yeah. And again, like those are aspirations that we have because we
Yeah.
want to be industry leaders.
Yeah.
We want to we want to see continued growth in what we do. I also understand that there's many gym owners there
Yeah.
who don't share those aspirations, but I hope that this is just kind of a word of warning that like if it hasn't happened in your area, and I will say that if you are in, a CBD or, an affluent country, you're in the main city or district, then if it hasn't come your way, it's coming very, very soon. I'd say if you're positioned or you're located in things like suburbs and districts, you probably have
Where you
a
already
bit more.
have monopoly of your
Yeah,
town,
you've got more
basically.
time,
Yeah.
but at the same in the
Coming.
same breath, if it comes to your town, then your monopoly's over.
Yeah.
And there's a high likelihood that it's going to shift to whatever this new thing is. So don't sit back and wait for that to happen and then react. One of the biggest things I've taken away from my trip in Australia and speaking to some, really savvy business owners is that the best in the industry, they're thinking 3 years ahead,
Yep.
right? They're predicting trends on what's happening,
Willing to take risks.
willing to take risks, and then making moves now. Now, I think what we're talking about, we're not predicting a trend. This trend is already happening. It just may not have reached you yet. So you need to make sure that you're opening up your eyes to what's happening around you. And I would say, business owners, do what I did. It doesn't have to mean getting on a plane, but it means getting out of your bubble and seeing what the industry is doing, because it was an amazing 4 days. I took more out of that 4 days than I have probably in the last year of sitting on an internet and chat GPT trying to figure out what the hell to do next. So really recommend, like, step outside your comfort zone, step outside your bubble, go and experience fitness and gyms, and you will take away something away from every single place you go to. And I mean, this is exactly why we have our affiliate program. The whole idea was to get gym owners on the same call, on a call in a group every week and every month, to be able to share experiences, to spot trends, and to ultimately lift one another up. It's basically it's a networking investment that, we strongly believe is a very important part of how to build good businesses.
Yeah. I think there was a lot of good takeaways there. It's a good conversation that we've been having lots and lots about, and it's not over. Like we said, we're just in the beginnings of really taking a look at our offerings and our services and us as individuals of like what we're doing within this space. So I'm excited to see how all of these conversations and learnings play out.
Yes, me too. Izzy, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.